My next guest is a neuroscientist, one of the foremost experts in the world on bioethics. He joins us tonight to reflect on this March for Life and some breaking stories. Welcome back to the program, the Director of Education at the National Catholic Bioethics Center, Father TAD PACHOLCZYK. Father TAD, thanks for returning.
Great to be with you.
Let's talk for a moment about what is moving people to this pro-life position. We are seeing people, I saw some today on this march, people who told me they could never have imagined themselves taking part in a march like this or even holding the belief they now have toward this issue of life.
Well, I certainly think one of the things is that we are more effectively addressing people's fears. I'm convinced that a lot of abortion happens because people feel they have no other options. So my heroes are the Crisis Pregnancy Center people. They're there, the people who are on the sidewalks reaching out to these women. I think that's a major piece that is shifting individuals to a pro-life position. I would say also, it seems to me that we're sort of pushing back against the sexual revolution a little bit. And we need to do that because there's such a tight connection between abortion and the sexual revolution. I remember there was this gathering that Dale Vree had many years ago. He had 6 pro-lifers, he had 6 pro-choicers, and there was 2 undecideds. They got together, they were going to have this big discussion. He thought it was going to be all about when does life begin. It ended up that one of them, after they went back and forth a little bit on that, blurted out, "We're pro-sex and you're anti-sex." And he took that to mean, well, that those who oppose abortion believe that sex should only be within marriage, heterosexual marriage. Meanwhile, pro-abortion advocates often believe in sex in many different forms. So I think this connection, as we educate people about the teachings of the Church, about ordered sexuality, it reins in the temptation. And it changes their viewpoint. You know, when they realize that sexuality has an order to it, then abortion becomes a real problem for them.
You mentioned teaching. I'm going to return to these rabbit comments of the Pope. These have been, my emails have been just overloaded this week, and voicemails about this issue. Many, particularly women, took real umbrage at these comments, particularly this notion that the woman having 7 cesareans was tempting God. And is it just the media? I've had people say, well, this is just the media. It's a media spin.
It's hard to say. I think the media does look for real sound bites that will, you know, carry well.
Yeah, but they're not making this up. These are actually the sound bites.
It's true, but if you look at the fact, for example, that the Pope at his Wednesday audience today went over some more of this, they were saying it was a rabbit reframe. So, you know, there's an attempt here to kind of clarify. I think he was trying to be a little bit provocative here. Now, you know, let me just say something about rabbits. I mean, rabbits are what we call reflex ovulators. So when they copulate, they release an egg, and they become pregnant almost immediately. This is not the case for humans. 1 egg each month. And we have a space where humans are infertile. And so, in a sense, the rabbit comment can be turned properly to point out that difference and to say, look, humans can choose responsible parenthood. You know, when there are serious reasons to avoid a pregnancy, God has given us this beautiful cycle which allows us to time things in a way that's in accord with His will.
Some of the major papers that I read this week covering this story said the Pope was advocating the rhythm method. That is not what he was advocating at all.
Well, I would say that he was advocating the rhythm method and, you know, any natural approach.
But the natural family planning approach is not really the rhythm method anymore. That's this antiquated thing.
Yes.
That is gone. What's replaced it is much more organic.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, it's not...
relies on far more
there are other indicators,
etc., and much more precise. It's become, you know, a refined science. So absolutely, in that sense, I didn't catch the drift of where you're going with that.
Sometimes
but
I'll lead you. It's okay. Tell me about how assisted reproduction and the rise of surrogacy that we're seeing across the culture, everywhere, how that has changed the understanding of this issue, or has it?
I think it has. I think what has happened is we've seen kind of the logical next step. If a child is a product that can be eliminated through abortion, then also the child should be a product that can be engendered when we want. We can hire other people to carry our children. We can create children in glassware in the lab. So there's a kind of this fancy word, commodification, where it's no longer that the child is pure gift. received mysteriously in the marital embrace. Rather, the child is a product now, something that if I want, I can have. If I don't want, I can turn away. So it ties in. I think the move in reproductive medicine has really tied in very closely with the whole pro-abortion mentality. And I think there's a need to, in a sense, push back here and remind people of things like you shouldn't be producing embryos, you shouldn't be freezing embryos in the laboratory. This is another form of abortion as you do this as well. When you create young human beings, there's a 50% loss of those embryos when you freeze and thaw them, you know, exposing them to terrible risks, etc. So to kind of unite the whole continuum, we need to do that, starting with some of these very, very early time points, including stem cell research.
I want to run through some very quick things that I've picked up in the last couple of days. I overheard a press conference. Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader, was speaking, and she said, look, I know more about childbirth than the Pope does, okay? I've had 5 kids in 6 years. And she made the statement that abortion is really a decision between the woman, her body, her conscience, and her God. You would say what to her?
Well, I mean, the claim that it's, first of all, I mean, there's the common claim that it's her body.
Right.
And this is a decision about her body. And I think it was Kathy Ireland, the supermodel. She said, look, there's a 50% chance that your baby will be a male and have a penis. And that women don't have penises. So it's clear that this is not your body. This is rather the case where your body is carrying another individual. So it's a very kind of simple rebuttal to that soundbite. Oh, it's all my body.
What about this notion of I'm personally opposed? You hear this on Capitol Hill all the time. Look, I go to Mass every weekend. I'm personally opposed, but I got to live out. I can't impose my beliefs on others.
Right. Well, you know, that particular argument, if you remember...
The Mario Cuomo argument.
Right, but also, yeah, if you think back to another event that happened not that long ago, the George Tiller killing in Kansas of the abortionist. There was somebody who shot him.
Yeah.
And then there were commentators afterwards who were saying, well, if you don't want to kill abortionists, then you don't have to kill abortionists, kind of thing. So, in other words, they were flipping the logic around.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's kind of grisly.
It is grisly, but I mean, I think that to hold to the logic here, we've got to, affirm the value of life, not just of an abortionist, but clearly across the whole continuum.
Give me your sense of the tensions that you see, the conflicts in this pro-life movement. The problem with a march like this is it kind of, I think, glosses over some of these things that are more apparent during the rest of the year. On a day like this, when you see the banners and all the young kids getting out of school buses, it's a different feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's encouraging in one sense to see so many people who are here, who are marching, who are convicted about the need to protect human life. And yet at the same time, being, as it is for me, working in a very pro-life institution, when we talk about collaborating among different pro-life groups, I feel like there's a lack of unity sometimes. There are some people who want to claim certain areas of territory, maybe as their own. So I think we need to build a real unity, especially among those of us who are most in the trenches, and to reach out and build bridges more than we have. You know, disunity, it's the sign, it's the work of the devil. And I think he seeks to separate even pro-lifers and make them not work well together. But a march like this really is a sign of hope, I think.
Well, what should people be doing in the public square? What isn't being done today? I mean, the danger is people show up for the march and then they go home and they don't say anything for another year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to win some of the soundbite arguments. I think we have to continue to humanize the embryo. So I think things like the ultrasounds are incredibly valuable in just saying to people, here's what we're actually dealing with. I think we have to do some things like reclaim higher education. I think when, I always tell the story of a young fellow who I know who just recently went to college, went to his class, and his professor said to him, well, I assume that all of you are pro-choice. It was as if it was a foregone conclusion. This is the only intellectually acceptable position, is to be pro-choice. And so I think we need to get some, professors who are pro-life into the academic setting. We don't have enough of that. So it's a very muted presence. Thanks be to God for those who we do have, like Marianne Glendon and others, you know, who really give great witness where they are.
Father TAD PACHOLCZYK, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Raymond.
We'll see you again soon. For more on Father TAD's work and for all his columns, you can visit the National Catholic Bioethics Center website. They're at ncbcenter.org. Now, before we go, the world over is seeking a new producer, someone with some broadcast TV experience, a detailed-oriented person who wants to have a real influence and help us cover the world as only we can. If you're interested in this DC-based position, send an email to EWTN Human Resources at humanresources@EWTN.com. Perhaps you can be part of our growing team.